But right here in my hands, I actually have something very special. This is the Pixel 7 Pro, and it's a phone that I actually pawned off of a relative. If it were up to me, I'd probably have gone for a later version of the Pixel phone, especially with the promised 7 years of updates, whether or not Google will actually uphold them. But one of the reasons I've been so excited about this phone is that this is the first phone that I've ever had to install a custom operating system on it. Yes, believe it or not, of all the phones that I've ever owned, I have never owned a phone with a custom operating system. I chose to go down this route because I am so excited to have a phone with a custom operating system in it, and a custom operating system fully free of the Google and Apple experience and ecosystem.
You serious?
Buckle up, guys. It's time to learn about how to flash Android ROMs. Now, what I did with my device was I chose to install Graphene OS as my custom Android ROM. But why would someone choose to do this? And it all really comes down to control and functionality. Since many manufacturers make it really difficult, they are essentially taking away your freedom to install custom operating systems on your device. And this is really important to be using something like Android, because compared to something like Apple, you can't install a custom operating system on it, because on Android, with select phones, you do have that choice. That all being said, there are lots of risks, and I don't want to go without mentioning them. In the past, installing custom Android operating systems could brick your device, but that is way in the past and times have changed. As long as you run a big name, reputable Android ROM, the chances of you bricking your phone are pretty small, especially when you have operating systems like Graphene OS and Calyx OS who actually provide scripts for you to run and automatically choose the correct image for you and install everything and do all the hard work. As long as you play it safe and stick to the big name ROMs, it's really, really hard to mess up. And while I'm all about encouraging software freedom and running what you want on your device, I do want to warn you against rooting your device or the choice of Android ROM that you pick. Rooting usually gives the end user the same ability to run dangerous commands on your system. But Trafotin, I use Lineage OS and I haven't gotten in trouble yet for rooting my phone. The problem is rooting your phone has dangerous consequences, especially if you're downloading files outside of the Google Play Store. And sure, you could get by off your whiz-bang, battery-enhancing apps and your custom host files, but newer innovations prove that an unrooted device is just as great, and substitutions can be done with the same things. And this is why I am such a big proponent of Graphene OS. Graphene OS is a custom Android ROM designed not to compromise on user security while still respecting your rights, especially your rights to privacy.
How do you function?
And Google might have a hit or miss track record when it comes to building smartphones, but the reality is Google has always been reliable at keeping your software of your device up to date.
I'm going to keep this one quick. So Google has settled with California for $93 million over a location privacy allegation. Pretty much, they accuse the giant of deceiving users about how they use location data, and this was based on how they were doing things a few years ago. Google has changed how they do things, but they still had to settle for this prior issue. If you want to read more about the details, down in the show notes. But yeah, Google did have to deal with this settlement.
Our next headline says, "You're owed money from a Google class action lawsuit settlement." The article says, if you Googled anything between 2006 and 2013, then Google owes you money for violating your privacy. Those are the terms of a class action lawsuit that Google has settled for $23 million. The current estimated payout is about $7.70 per person. Of course, that number could go up or down before it's all over. If fewer people than expected file claims, the payout will go up. But if more people than expected file claims, the amount will go down because more people are sharing the settlement money. The deadline to file a claim is July 31st. Instructions are in the article for those who care. It's unclear if this suit applies only to residents of Washington state, because this is a Washington-based outlet, or if it's all US residents. The article didn't really specify, but I'm sure there's more details on the website. So, speaking of being held accountable, Google reaches a $39.9 million privacy settlement with the state of Washington. The settlement revolves around the claims that Google deceived people into believing they controlled how the search and advertising company collected and used their personal data. In reality, the state said Google was able to collect and profit from the data even if consumers disabled the tracking technology on their smartphones and computers, invading consumers' privacy. A consent decree filed on Wednesday in King County Superior Court requires Google to be more transparent about its tracking practices and provide a more detailed location technologies webpage describing them. In November, Google agreed to pay $391.5 million to resolve similar allegations in 40 US states. Some states, including Washington, chose to sue Google on their own. Arizona reached an $85 million settlement with Google last October in one of those cases.
The new Civil Liberties Alliance has filed a class action lawsuit against the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. In April 2021, DPH worked with Google to create a contact tracing app. But because of its low adoption, the lawsuit alleges that they again conspired with Google to install the app without consent onto Android devices located in the state. So this actually shows, and there's evidence, that lots of people had to uninstall this app from their phone because it was installed for them. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you read this one, the app reinstalled itself after some people uninstalled it.
I don't know about that part, but they did speculate that there's probably a lot of people that still have this app because they don't even realize that it installed itself.
Yeah, it wasn't just like, oh, we installed an app for you. It's just like in the background installed itself. That is actual spyware, people. Serious problem. They might have good intentions and all this, what blah, blah, blah. The point is, it sets a very dangerous precedent of like, hey, this should not be... Google, no one should have the ability to remotely install something that is unauthorized by you.
And has pledged the longest support of Android operating systems, way far ahead of their competition. If it were up to me, I'd probably have gone for a later version of the Pixel phone, especially with the promised 7 years of updates, whether or not Google will actually uphold them. And I know the irony of saying you will get a completely Google Apple-free private experience using a Google phone is incredibly ironic, but Google phones are legitimately the easiest phones that you can install, not just Graphene OS, but any custom Android ROM. If you don't want to install Graphene OS, or when Graphene OS finally hits its end of life, you can install something like Calyx OS or Divest OS on here.
Is this guy a retard?
So if you are sold on using a custom Android ROM, you're tired of being oppressed by your Android manufacturer, or you're tired of being oppressed by Apple, ripping away your rights at every turn, you can have a nice, fresh Google and Apple free phone when you use a Google phone.